The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode.
The summer of 2004 at 20.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Brandon Peters Show and our continued adventure into the summer of 2004 at 20. A series taking a weekend-by-weekend look at the summer of 2004 and the movies and the pop culture that surrounded them. As always, with me from Puck News and the Outside Scoop, which this week is a burgundy velvet flavor, Scott Mendelson.
That sounds appetizing. I would try that.
There you go. And from We Live in Entertainment and Out Now with Aaron and Abe, he Galahad me at hello, Aaron Neuwirth.
Hey.
Oh, how are you, gents?
Feeling classy.
I'm doing pretty well.
A little bit easier this week. 4 movies instead of 5. Because that's easier. And
2 of them are really short and 2 of them are really long.
And it feels like we have a real sense of, to me at least, a head-to-head battle here for supremacy. Like 2 studios were like, I'm not backing down from a high quality, like a high-end title. We're gonna go at each other. And it's something I know we've seen like Shrek 2 where everything shies away, Spider-Man where everything shies away. And there's always like, you're the kind of the sure thing, you might be something, but I feel like there's 2 here that studios were expecting things from.
Well, it's funny you say that because like weeks ago we talked about another kind of comedy versus prestige with someone like Spielberg, who, you know, Mr. Box Office at one point, versus a literal underdog story and the movie.
All right.
The much cheap it's not like the Terminal cost a shit ton of money.
Made less, but cost a lot less too.
Not like it cost as much as one of the movies we're talking about this week, but still, it was one that
spoilers,
did not.
history is going to.
Did I finish my side of this before Scott jumps in? Like, Jesus Christ. Come on,
Scott, you have a podcast now. You know to let people finish.
I think you got what I'm saying.
I get you.
No, I'm good. No,
Sentence out. I mean, I know you know where I'm going with it.
Oh, stay tuned to the end where we have a box office discussion if you've never been here before. And if you also never been here before, you will know that you won't know that we start with the news. This is our first segment.
And I found a reason for you. And the reason is news.
33-34% is about okay. Actually, my own estimate, not whole estimate, is around 35%. If I could reach that figure, then I will be okay for me to go to the second one.
On July 5th this week, the Indonesian presidential election by the people, for the people. First round eventually won. It's a first round, so they I don't know. They do some sort of like bracketed tournament with this or something. Eventually won. What?
They build them onto a building and have a big shootout / fight, and then the last person standing lives.
All right. Fair and offended anybody. His email is this election was eventually won by Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. So yeah.
I got nothing.
July 11th at the Canadian Open Women's Golf Legends, the Nigeria GC Meg Mallon wins by 4 strokes from Beth Daniel. And at the Senior Players Championship Men's Golf on the same day, the TPC of Michigan, Englishman Mark James wins his lone career major title by 1 stroke from Jose Maria Canizares of Spain. Congratulations. Yep, and that's all we have for news this week.
Come on, what a fucking terrible news segment.
I know.
I always look forward to that.
Well,
you like to make fun of the
who died, Brandon.
Yeah, exactly. Well, wait till you hear who died, Scott.
There wasn't a single natural disaster that killed hundreds of people. Come on.
No, but Prime Minister of Jamaica Hugh Shearer passed away. Race car driver Roger Ward, singer Sarita Wright, the president of Austria, Thomas Klestil. So like leaders be dying. Actor Jean Lefebvre, author Paul Danzinger, and Pieter Bratiga, a graphic artist. Actress Isabel Sanford, journalist Paul Klebenakov, and Lawrence Rockefeller, American CEO of Chase Manhattan Bank. Lots of power
Take
dying.
that.
Yeah, we have no birthdays, but we have a wedding. The West Wing actor Dul Hill weds actress Nicole Lynn in Montego Bay, Jamaica.
Mazel.
And same day the prime minister died, apparently. No, just kidding. I don't know. I don't know what day.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
psych.
This looks like a job for psych.
Oh,
Dule Hill.
this Brandon Peters show surely is some kind of monster. Our first movie this week. Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, playing in 3 theaters.
I'm not enjoying being in the room with you playing.
I don't understand who you are, okay? I realize now that I barely knew you before.
It's been a beast, and it's sucked a lot of me into it. From day one, it's been competitive.
I just feel so disrespected.
I spent a large amount of my time trying to downplay my ego and be an example to the other guys.
I was straight up with you.
I think it's stock. Which part of that is unclear to you?
What have you been doing? Picking at me all night.
Save up the tension. Tension produces results.
If I hadn't had music in my life, it's quite possible I could be in here or be dead. I'd much rather be alive.
What is it you feel that you're not saying now?
If you're not happy playing music with me, if you walked away from Metallica, I'm not sure that it would surprise me. I'm prepared for the worst. As a result of the alcohol, it was just very difficult for him to communicate from the heart.
I wake up the next day somewhere in some bed. I don't know who this person is next to me, and I'm drunk, completely hungover, and have a show to do, and the result is the same. It was so predictable.
The unraveling of a band, and then there were 2. I hope he will come back and try and finish the making of this record.
It's gonna sound amazing. The stadium with 100,000 people raising the evil horns up to the sky and saying Metallica, baby.
I'm afraid to get close to people because I don't know how to do it. I don't know how you're supposed to do it. I'm working really hard on being the best dad and husband I can be. And life now is pretty exciting. You don't know what's going to happen.
I like that.
Yeah.
Some kind of monster. This monster lives.
Directed by Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky, starring James Hetfield, Lars Ulrich, Kirk Hammett, Robert Trujillo, and plenty of other people that worked with Metallica through the follow-up to Reload, Saint Anger. So the iconic metal band struggles for 2 years to create their album, Saint Anger, dealing with alcoholism, the loss of their bass player. He didn't die. The first one did, Cliff, back in the 80s or early 90s or whatever.
86 car crash, I think.
It was a bus.
A tour bus crash.
A tour bus crash, yeah. James Newsted, he leaves Metallica, and there's a lot. We'll talk about that. And the challenge of working with a psychotherapist. So guys, Metallica fans, any of you, I like Metallica. I haven't kept up with them since this album. That is the focus of this. But I always liked the Blackout, the Master of Puppets, awesome album. Ride the Lightning, awesome. And Justice for All, Black Album. I didn't mind the Load Reload. I know that's a very kind of contentious topic with them.
That is
but
Fuel, right?
So
Fuel is on
smoke
Reload.
detectors.
Give me fuel, give me fire.
I like that song.
Yeah, Load
But-
was Until It Sleeps and Hero of the Day. I think we're on that one. It was like Load and Reload was a double album released at 2 separate times. That's what the idea was with it, because they worked on so much stuff. They kind of changed their sound to it. Yeah, so I was around the time, and then they struggled to follow it up here. Scott, you Metallica at all, or?
Ambivalent. I certainly respect them and what have you, and I've always been aware of them via cultural osmosis. But when I was a wee one, my heavy metal fix was Guns N' Roses, of course.
Gotcha. Which Metallica opened for Guns N' Roses and had helped climb them to fame. And like a lot of the times, Metallica kind of took people from Guns N' Roses because Axl was such a mess that he didn't go on. There was that big one where Axl refused to go on stage in Canada, and Metallica just decided to rock the house all night, and it caused a riot in Canada because Axl was just like, "No, I'm not going out tonight."
I have to imagine it's hard to do.
Yeah, very polite.
Yeah,
riot.
I think it was. Yeah. Can I
Just
flip
kind
your
of, like,
car,
gently
sir?
shoving each other. And
Can I flip your car?
Sorry,
I
sorry.
think it was Canada. I'm not sure. Maybe I got that wrong.
I'm going to throw a Molotov cocktail. Please get out of the way.
Brandon, there he goes, blaming Canada again.
I got to, man.
It's for socialized healthcare.
Oh no, it was Missouri. Sorry, the other Canada.
The Canada
Fuck.
of the South.
I have
Sorry, Canada. I thought it was Canada. I can't remember things right. It is, but
committed slander.
Slander. Sorry, Canada. If I didn't edit this,
Not even like Kansas. You weren't even close.
No, I wasn't. Like,
were
well, I saw
barely on the
Ozark.
right
I saw
continent.
Ozark. That makes sense. Yeah, but no. So it's weird because I've watched Metallica go from this cool metal band that was like popular to now like classic rock, one of the greatest bands of all time, like iconic status. And I wasn't there for the beginning. Like I didn't know them till like really Enter Sandman and the Black Album was where with that was one of the highest selling albums of the 90s, was the Black Album. I think it is I don't think it is in terms of like of the 90s, but since like if you go back, it's the highest selling album of the 90s. And just I went back and rediscovered their old stuff back then during it, and now they had a little like wave of like a resurgence with Master of Puppets being featured in Stranger Things, and like a lot of people go, "Ooh, Metallica," and then they get into one song and call it a day. But that's kids today, though. But yeah, so
children, and they're barely investigating rock history.
Yeah, one of my friends, James, growing up, him and his brother Lee, biggest Metallica fans of the world. James still a huge Metallica fan. Loves, like, he'll just send like any little Metallica related thing in our text group. He will send something Metallica. He loves them to death. Huge diehard fan. Which funny story, the Saint Anger album, when it came out, I came home one day when he had bought it and we were living together. It was in the summer, and I hear something playing and it was not very good from his room, and he was sitting there with his head down. I'm like, this isn't the new Metallica, is it? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh man. He's like, yeah, it's not good. Yeah, they were, I mean, legitimately hadn't produced anything subpar. They've controversial, but really hadn't put anything out subpar. And then this one was not well received. And I went back and I was like, has this been reanalyzed? Where was my close-knit circle the same wavelength about this album at the time as anybody else? And yeah, if you look up articles or rankings or people's discussion boards, this one constantly comes in last place.
It's funny because offline you were telling me how you love Saint Anger.
Dude, I said I play a character on the podcast, Aaron. It's different. So, okay, let's go to this.
I like how you're preloaded to like.
It's no Chinese democracy, that's for sure.
What'd you say?
It's no Chinese democracy.
No,
there's no Chinese
Few
democracy.
things are.
I did buy Chinese democracy because I was like, I have to hear this after all these years. And
you couldn't get it through Napster.
No, you cannot. We'll talk about this. Right. So, Aaron, what do you think of? Have you seen Some Kind of Monster? And what's your thoughts?
I had not seen it. I knew about it since it came out. Ebert and Roper had a very good conversation about it. They were big fans of it at the time, as I recall. And it's one where if I was able to get around to it, I would have, but it wasn't like I'm not a Metallica guy, so it wasn't like I desperately need to see this. It was more like this is a very interesting thing to me. I like the idea of seeing a rock band literally try to mend the wounds that they have through therapy. That's interesting. 30, 20 years later, still didn't get to it until this past week. And as far as like my Metallica know-how, like no, I'm just not I've never been like much of a metal guy to begin with. The 2000s, of course, the new metal craze was everywhere, so we were all into that.
Aaron's like Train. That's about as hardcore as I go. Drops of Jupiter.
Hey, we all bought the chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored one. You could not.
We had to keep rolling.
Now we mentioned that, but in 2000, the closest to metal I got was a lot of these like soundtrack, because I'm a big soundtrack guy, and so when it's like the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack, which at the time fucking ruled, that was probably like outside of like just knowing Enter Sandman and like other songs. I Disappear on that soundtrack from Metallica. I really like that song.
Well, there's a lot of people in this era crossing over because the new metal and hip hop were mixing a lot, and there's a lot like Korn started. They kind of were the genesis of the new metal because they had Fieldy played like a lot of hip hop riffs and stuff like that with it, and they had a bounce to them that wasn't quite like just straight up heavy metal. It was something else, and they were doing some rap verses and stuff. So like the new metal stuff was bringing in people that didn't listen to metal or hard rock. And people were branching out from metal that liked the new metal to hip hop. Like, cause like, it was easy for me not being a rap guy for the longest time to jump from like Korn to DMX. Like that was an easy jump.
It worked for me in the reverse way, except I'm very specific with my rap because I like very certain kinds of hip hop, but at the same time, like, yes, as far as something like Korn, System of a Down, that was a big one for like,
yeah.
And because those are ones that are like actually are pretty much metal. They're just kind of
POD
realm, not so much POD, but no, System, Deftones, I was huge on. Like, but those are like
Deftones was awesome. Yeah, I like them.
That's like less new metal. That's just more of like metal in the 2000s, but that just happens to get categorized that way. Regardless of all this, Metallica, yes, not so much my jam. Like I like the the singles when I hear them, but I never like went out and got one of their albums, like specifically because it was Metallica. With this movie, which by the way, you mentioned the director is Joe Berlinger. Who's that again, Brandon? What do you do?
What do you do?
Book of Shadows.
Oh God. Okay. A name I try to forget.
I thought you were going to say you got those murdery teens out of jail.
He basically did. He just killed them off, including Jeffrey Donovan for Burn Notice on USA with Mike, starring Dooley Hill,
and that girl from Spike Lee movies. I forget her name. She appears in like 4 Spike Lee movies.
Yeah. I can't offhand right now. Regardless,
because we all forget Book of Shadows.
Yeah, this movie. I did really like it a lot. Actually, it's probably my favorite documentary we've watched so far. We watched quite a few documentaries so far for this podcast series. I found like it's a neat, especially now, it works as a solid time capsule because like we were saying this last week, or as far as like the way we're seeing documentaries, ones you don't necessarily need to see again is because they exist in a time frame where it's like what's the point of like continually revisiting these things. This is literally like just watching history. Like, you're just watching something that happens to be, it's not like talking heads to talk about something 60 years ago, but it's still like a place in time where you have a sense of where this band is and a very specific thing they're going through. And I liked how it framed that. I didn't realize it was 2 hours and 20 minutes. I turned it on and like an hour and a half in, I was like, I guess we're wrapping up. It's like, there's another hour.
Yeah, it's long.
But no, I thought it was quite engaging. I really liked seeing how open it was. It's a very honest documentary. I mean, the fact that you're literally watching guys in therapy, let alone, heavy metal rockers in therapy. That's not something I imagine happens very often to the point of let's film this and put it out there for the world to see. It certainly gives you a distinct idea of who they are, regardless if they're playing certain things up. And I only apply that to one person. We'll get there in a second, because James Hetfield, I think, is really interesting as far as watching him struggle with alcoholism, struggle with different things, and like have these different phases. What's Kirk, right?
Kirk Hammett.
Kirk Hammett. like we all need to be friends with him. He seems like the good one. He seems like the guy. It's like
no one ever. Everyone has opinions on Hetfield and Ulrich, but Kirk Hammett's just like
he's the
fine.
peace.
He's cool dude.
He's the guy. You're like, yeah, this guy. And even the new bassist they get in. Rio, right?
Yeah, Trujillo. Yeah, and he's been there since. Like
he's been there since.
He's longer than Newstead now. Yeah.
And I look at him and it's like, this guy seems cool too. Newstead, I always, even in like the Mission Impossible 2 I Disappear music video, I'm like, I don't know about this guy. He seems like the odd man out in this quartet.
Did you ever see the behind the music?
I have.
He had my favorite quote in there where like they asked him about people calling Metallica sellouts. He goes, yeah, we sell out every night, every city, every venue.
He seems like a guy that is really cool.
And this movie constantly telling himself, I made the right decision. I made the right decision. I made the right decision. I made the right decision.
He seems really cool. And so does the guy that went to Megadeth who was there beforehand.
Oh, Mustaine?
Who's like...
That could have gone... I wanted more of that. That's a huge moment.
If they did more of that, it would just be like more bad looking at... Because he's like...
Well, he's bitter.
Yes, sure, we're in Megadeth, a band that's quite popular and does
right.
Really, but I'm going to be very bitter about it all the time.
Like, he lucked out that Megadeth got to where it was.
Yeah.
Like,
but even says, most people would be pretty okay with my, consolation prize, but.
Yeah. So this brings me to Lars. Lars.
Okay. Yeah. Bring me to Lars. Let's do it.
My frame of reference for Lars can be boiled down to his appearance on the MTV Music Video Awards that were hosted by the Wayans brothers, because there's a small segment. This is the height of the Napster thing. There's a small like filmed segment where like Marlon's like listening to like music through Napster and like rock it out, and then Lars steps into his doorway and there's like basically a PSA about you don't want to share. It's not cool to share, and he like drinks his soda, and then Marlon drinks soda, and he's like, "You just drank before 30 years of groupies." It's like, that's the point you're trying to make? Getting music? That you like get an STD from sharing music with somebody? Like, this is the equivalation that you're going for? It's so that's me thinking about Lars. He's this guy that like has a very specific idea of, I'm hip and great because I'm a rock star. Also, I'm old and I can't handle the idea of the internet. That's him. So watching him in this movie, it pretty much rings like, yeah, this makes perfect sense for a guy that hates Napster so much. I'm not even saying he's necessarily wrong. It's just more of...
Here's the thing. In hindsight, he probably was the last bastion to save whatever artist could make off anything. Because now they don't make shit, and like no one was looking as far ahead as Lars Ulrich. And we all hated him at the time because we were young, didn't understand. But he probably... Because now they make like 2 cents for a month of Spotify for huge hits, and they sell their libraries because they ain't worth dick. And if he at least got people something out of it.
Yeah, it's just he presents himself. We've had this conversation about Ghostbusters. He's the William Peck here. William
Atherton. Yeah.
He's Peck, where he's not necessarily wrong, but he's being a dick about it.
Right. Yeah.
And
I watched interviews, and I forgot that cartoon thing happened with Napster bad, Metallica good. I forgot about that till I watched this. I was like, oh yeah, I used to watch those.
So seeing the movie like highlight that period and him being very aware that he's like the most hated person.
Yeah.
I found that to be, it doesn't make me like him necessarily more, but I found it to be illuminating why I don't, it's not like I hate Lars Ulrich. He's whatever. He's a good drummer. He does the job, and he's fine. He's a person.
Yeah.
But he does have these moments where he's like, we're watching these like, these battles between these guys trying to figure stuff out. And he has like one scene where there's this whole speech he's given about like, the only thing I think of when I think of James is fuck. And it just feels like, dude, you were outside like rehearsing this for 15 minutes. I swear, like there's no like world where this feels like off the cuff, you describing your emotions. And so there's this like, there's something about him where just he feels very, he seems the most aware that there's a camera during this document.
Gotcha. Well, okay, rather than bring it up during mine, this is perfect to bring this up. I did feel there were many moments that felt phony in this, that felt like they were maybe like, oh, we should do this here, record. There's a moment where Kirk Hammett, James Hetfield, and Lars Ulrich are all just talking some shit out on the couch. And Kirk Hammett says, guys, he's like, you guys, we're sitting here going at each other, hashing it out. when we should be in there hashing it out with our music. And I'm like, oh, that's fucking, yeah, okay, all right. Like, that's like a trailer moment, like a, you know, like it felt phony to me. It felt like, what if we said this, or we should say this right now? There were some very staged things at times in this documentary.
I don't disagree with you. I would say it wasn't like rubbing me the wrong way for the most part, just because whatever. It's in an age of reality television. Like I can understand a need to handle things a certain way. But it is like it's the vulnerability and honestly just seeing the arcs of the band throughout this thing that I ultimately really appreciate this, where the other docs that I also liked, there's not a reason for me to want to revisit them unless we do, a podcast about the summer of 2004 at 60, where this is like, I look at this and I'm like, I can see reason why I'd want to watch this again because there's entertainment value in it.
Right.
There's stuff going on here that I appreciate. I found it quite interesting. I was a fan. I really liked it.
Okay, Scott?
No, I agree with you. And it certainly did provide a counterbalance to the, this summer's slate of, oh God, we thought we were on the cusp of something great, but now we're not, social documentaries that we've been watching all summer.
Mm-hmm.
This is, other than the, in hindsight, Napster stuff where it's like, yeah, he was right. I mean, yeah, I used it when I was in college, but he wasn't wrong.
We just moved all to LimeWire. So
yeah. But other than that, I mean, it's entertaining. It's not incredibly depressing in the sense of, again, in hindsight, oh God, look how far we haven't come. And it was, in a skewed way, it was kind of fun watching what felt like real life enactments of cliches you find in musical biopics.
Sure.
And that's not a criticism. It's just, there's a reason a lot of those films have those elements because this is something that happens a lot with, rock stars and musicians and what have you. And it is interesting to see a relatively no big deal approach to these stereotypical, I don't want to say macho men. That's not what they were, but they're, alpha males, I guess, sitting down with a shrink.
Their personas were, but they're rock star,
they're called
artists.
Metallica. I mean,
yeah.
And the idea of them sitting down with a therapist, I felt wasn't presented as that, shocking and never before done. It's like, no, it's seemed like a good idea, so they agreed to it. And I do like the spot.
It's less about the Sopranos as far as like, can you believe that this guy's doing this thing? It's just let's show the vulnerability. Let's show that.
And I do like the bits and pieces here and there where it's like it almost seems like the thing that spurs them to action is them finding a common enemy in the therapist.
Yes.
Yes.
And I love that. I think he thinks he's part of the band. He's going to go on tour with us.
It's like, is this sort of like I'm going to hell for this reference, but in the Avengers where, you give them a common enemy to hate instead of you. And so, I mean, it's a crowd pleasing, enjoyable musical documentary that, considering the subject matter, is like a lot rosier and fluffier and just relaxing than you'd think.
Yeah.
This is not this hardcore look at the descent of hell. And I always like musical biopics and musical documentaries that really do show the boring nitty gritty of music being made, where it's not just, again, I apologize if I keep bringing up musical biopics, but it's like the idea of, they're having an argument and someone says, hit the road, Jack. And Ray Charles goes, and there aren't a lot of, other than maybe the Beach Boys biopic from 2015, that kind of
Mercy.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. That one I would think delved into the, sitting in a, hashing out the actual music.
So that one's
Yeah.
Well,
it's one of my favorite musical biopics in general. So.
That's what I like is the fly on the wall aspect here.
Yes.
That I love watching how the soup is made with an album or something like that. I really do like them sitting around the soup. Like Get Back, love that. Love like watching, just dicking around with the riffs, coming up with the chats they have, everything else. Like I love watching how that's made. Like I love on my my Doctor Who box sets that I like a lot, they contain raw studio footage from just inside the BBC while they're shooting in their studio during the days, and conversations and talking about scenes and how we're going to act or hit your mark over here or get the guy. Just kind of like interesting just watching the day-to-day process. And I like seeing that with an album here with music and stuff. And I don't think we get that enough. Like I always liked just like when back in the day, it seemed like when albums came out, MTV might have a special or you might get a bonus CD-ROM or DVD that would show you some footage of them messing around in the studio or preview footage. And I think that's really neat to see that process and little knickknacks and the producer at work going with the band.
I'd really love to see a fly in the wall for the Black Eyed Peas recording "Let's Get It Started."
Yes, please. Yes, please. Summer 2004 would have been there.
And I like the background, of why this project came to pass is that, it's Metallica was moved enough by the story surrounding the West Memphis 3 that they just said you could use our music for free, they almost, at that point in time, they almost never let movies or TV use their music.
Mm-hmm.
And that was how that relationship formed. And that was how, I stumbled upon that documentary in its first initial HBO airing, having no idea what I was getting into other than the general, true crime, blah, blah, blah. And it made me kind of a Joe Berlinger fan for a little while.
And then you saw Book of Shadows.
Yeah.
It was on DVD. And again, it was like, okay, this clearly isn't good. This also clearly isn't the movie he set out to make. Whatever. I hope he got paid well for it.
Well, yeah, you got to make a Metallica documentary years later.
So. Exactly. This was sort of the soul cleansing situation.
For everyone involved, yeah.
More or less. But no, this has only been on my radar, but I actually hadn't sat down and watched it. Because again, I'm not a huge Metallica fan, and it was a 2.5-hour documentary. So it's like there was always something more important on my queue, so to speak.
Right.
But I'm glad I finally got around to watching it now.
Yeah.
Because it's very entertaining.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch it back in the day and just kind of slipped. I just went on by. And I'd never seen it. I really enjoy this. I think this one really shows too, like rehab at work, because James Hetfield in the first 15 minutes of this movie goes to rehab. Time passes before they get back together. He's a totally different person.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, wow. And he almost stops the documentary because he's more in control of where, I don't know if that's for drama's sake, but because he's more aware of his surroundings and more self-aware. What's weird, you're talking about Lars Ulrich here. I always had Lars Ulrich was the little puny mouthy guy that annoyed everybody, and then James Hetfield was the big softy guy. But this documentary, I liked Lars more than I did Hetfield. Like Hetfield kind of came off like a prick a lot, like a cool, and I did like his self-awareness of Jason Newsted leaving, where he's like, Newsted says some harsh shit about him, and he's like, yeah, I did that. I'm at fault because I believe one way, which honestly, like, I see both their opinion. Like, I get it. Like, he's like, no, this is Metallica, man. We need to be Metallica first, and we're not doing side projects. And are you gonna like make an album with them? Are you gonna hold us up? Or you go like, what are you doing here? But the solution is, hey, how about you write some songs for our next album, bring them to the table, and let's work with that rather than making him have to go out and do a whole side project to explore some of his music stuff.
I hear you. It's not like it's a competition. It is because of that kind of self-awareness and acknowledgement of what he's going through and why he's acting certain ways, and the fact that he just is a controlling kind of person.
Yeah.
That's where I can get on his. I get where he's coming from.
No. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like
where Lars, he just is that kind of personality. I don't know how to. I can't reconcile that in my head as far as like.
Lars feels lost in the middle in this somehow. Like he feels like I'm in this situation. I don't want to fuck it up. I don't know how to deal with it, but I don't want to fuck it up. Like he seems really cautious that he doesn't want to fuck this whole thing up because he knows it's like really thin here. And then Newsted comes off as in denial, like all throughout this documentary. Every time they go to him, he seems like he's in denial of everything. And I like how they have this gig and they don't even have a bass player yet. Like they're so casual to get the bass player until it's like they're done with the album. Even like they have different people coming in and doing stuff on the album. I love them getting rid of the therapist. It's so funny. Like, and, well, I can't say I'm not mad, guys. I have to go with your decision, even if I'm against it. But like, yeah, he's like, they're like, yeah, get the fuck out. Like, that feels like this guy's got to go, man. Before we hit the road, we're good. We're all good. We know how to do this on our own. Get him out of here. But seeing it's really crazy to see that. I wonder if the footage is put in potentially, but it's clear one bass player fits them better than the rest when you're watching the auditions, which is kind of neat.
I think you show like, you don't know how it goes as far as how do you become a bass player for Metallica. It's like, yeah, you show a.
But I like how they have that conversation, I think, with the producer or with their tour managers. Like, look, you guys just got to come to the realization that you three are Metallica. Your bass players are going to come and go. Just from now on, Cliff was the bassist, but now it's everybody else, whoever comes in. And they've actually had the same bassist now for longer than Cliff Burton was with them, longer than Jason, than Cliff and Jason probably were with them, are close.
He didn't disappear.
Yeah, he didn't disappear. Sad but true, man. But yeah, it's a fun documentary. It's now 20 years old. There's a lot of Metallica since then. But they seem to have been pretty healthy. They released Say Anger. I mean, this one doesn't. It just Say Anger was released and sold a lot of copies. Debuted at
it was a hit album.
It was a hit album.
You can't take that away from them. Like it was a hit.
Yeah, they did have a streak of #1 albums, which came to an end. So being a Dave Matthews Band fan, I know that Dave Matthews Band had the streak of most consecutive #1 albums by a band. Metallica was next. I think DMB had 7, and it just ended with their last one, Walk Around the Moon. Although if you go by physical sales, it was still continued. But that's not how they rate it now. And then Metallica's ended at 6 with their last album. Just both of them last year. But
sounds like nothing else matters.
Yeah. Scott's lost. All right. So yeah. This is a cool documentary if you can find it. I don't think it's streaming anywhere, right?
It does have I believe a deluxe Blu-ray that came out.
It does have that, yeah. So
this is on Netflix right now.
Is it?
Is it?
Yeah, that's how I watched it.
Oh,
it's Netflix, and there's like a 10 years afterwards epilogue of sorts.
I don't want to watch that. Okay.
All right, yeah.
Only like 25 minutes, I think.
I don't care.
Okay, cool.
What's that after this?
At the time I was planning this,
I'm gonna watch it right now.
Yeah, at the time I was playing this, it was not on Netflix. So
yep. All
right, cool. Well, Scott Mendelson recommends, which when you're listening to this in July, it might not be there.
No.
So anyway, yeah. All right. So we'll move on to our next movie, Sleepover. Directed.
Also, realistic, thoughtful, gritty examination of young friends struggling to maintain friendships during perilous times.
Exactly. That's what, yeah. So, Sleepover.
It was the last day of school, and these 4 friends are going to celebrate.
Party! Maybe I should stay home tonight.
No, Mom, I know your rules. No leaving the house.
Stacy?
It started as a sleepover.
We decided to put together a little hunt. Hunting what? Scavenger hunting? You're on.
But it became their chance to prove they can take on the competition.
Help! I think I can get us a car.
Like I'm real cool.
The rules are set.
We have to get into the Cosmo Club.
And the battle is on.
Leathers. Posers. I think I just had a stroke. Is that my mother?
Hey, you!
Julie, get in!
I am a security officer! I took a 2-week course!
Hi, Mom. Could you pick me up?
Sleepover.
Okay, stop! Stop pushing! We're not pushing anymore!
It is directed by Joe Nussbaum, written by Elisa Bell, and starring Alexa Penavega, Mika Burem, Jane Lynch, Sam Huntington, Sarah Paxton, Brie Larson, Scout Taylor Compton, Douglas Smith, Karija Pevek for the first time of today. Steve Carrell. He's a regular Willem Dafoe. Steve Carell.
Big Stevie Summer.
Jeff Garland, Hunter Parrish, and Evan Peters. Desperate to improve their social status, four best friends enter into an all-night scavenger hunt against the popular clique in their school. Well, we had New York Minute a few months ago, and now we have this. Scott, tell us about Sleepover.
Meh. Yeah, it's exactly what's on the tin. It is quick, short, harmless, relatively wholesome. A lot of actors that would go on to bigger and better things, and some of them that wouldn't, frankly. There are moments that are sweet, endearing, and or funny, but I mean, look, jokes aside, I'm a 43-year-old man. I'm not the target audience for this. I wasn't the target audience for this when I was a 24-year-old when this came out in the summer of 2004. That being said, as far as these films go, it is harmless. It is light. It is colorful. It moves at a very breezy pace. And yeah, I mean, what else is there to say? I mean, it's not exceptionally good. And considering if you are in the target demographic, you could be watching Enchanted. You could be watching, What a Girl Wants is better than this, frankly. I mean, hell, at least in terms of, New York ambition. I mean, New York Minute isn't good, but it's a slightly bigger picture by default. It's amusing seeing Steve Carell in this very early role, given, basically just cashing a check. Otherwise, I mean,
well, this is probably Steve Carell just trying to be in any movie that's going to give him a part at this point. Yeah.
No, that's what I meant. I mean,
coming off Daily Show, yeah.
This is a year before the 40-year-old version.
And The Office too. This is a year before The Office, because Office was a spring. It was a spring show. Yeah, it was a spring show.
And it is inoffensive. It is not particularly problematic, I guess, as the kids would say now. There's one scene that skirts with or a taste involving them running into their teacher at a bar, but even that's, has a somewhat of a sweet payoff where he's nice to them, they're nice to him, and everybody leaves happy. And, there's nothing weird about it. It does, I kind of enjoy the extent to which it turned into it's sort of a stealth Cinderella story. It doesn't come out right out and say this is a Cinderella story, unlike another movie we'll be watching in a couple of weeks, which is called The Cinderella Story. But the tropes are all there. But I mean, in a world where Ella Enchanted and Mean Girls and et cetera exist, this is not an essential picture. And even if you are the target demographic, there's a lot of other movies that you need to check off your list first. And then if you still want to watch something new, here you go, Sleepover.
All right. Aaron.
I like how Scott's so worried about offending the fans of Sleepover that you can't just call it a bad movie, because it's a bad movie. I mean, that's what it is. It could be harmless. It can also still be bad.
It is what it is.
Yeah, which is bad. It's a bad movie. That's a fair statement that I can make. And don't maybe try to defend this over New York Minute, because that's a worse movie. Period. But no, I mean, it's not good. There, like Scott said, you're correct. There are plenty of better movies for this demographic featuring young, just out of middle school women that can easily satisfy what you're looking for as far as these kind of comedies go. And I'm sure there are, because nobody talks about this movie, but I hear plenty of other movies about this kind of group of kids that are still talked about today. I mean, it's bad. It's a bad film. The amount of mugging going on with Evan Peters and Sam Huntington, oh boy, like it is a lot. It is like all the men in this movie are presented as imbeciles, which is hilarious to me. And I'm not against that.
I do like that the dad is actually trying to do something kind of cool, and basically succeeds. He's trying to reinstall the water system or something.
The parents are innocent in this.
Exactly.
Which
I appreciate.
And
Jane Lynch.
Jane Lynch. Like, they're fine. They're doing the job. Steve Carell is basically doing the job, but even then, he's not mugging because he's older than Evan Peters, but he's still bugging. Like it's still like there's nothing here beyond like I guess I'll just play a broad role and see where that goes. They made 2 Home Alones that made millions of dollars out of it. I mean, that's fine. I mean, that's not an unacceptable thing. But I mean, yeah, like as far as is it watchable? Is it a breezy film? Sure, it moves fair enough. It has the plotting of this is so weird to me, where it's what the popular girl basically gets dumped, and so her solution is, well, I guess I'll just get into a random bet with a former friend of mine for the sake of what exactly? Like it's such a weird like concept for like why there needs to be a driving force of this movie to begin with. There's no real stakes beyond we've invented stakes. Where we're already the popular girls, we can do whatever we want to, but now we're going to purposely put ourselves in harm's way of like sitting at the dumpster tables at lunch where we could just not do that at all and continue being the popular girls.
Right.
It's weird in that regard. There there's not, I mean, yes, I can struggle to like say things about this without just like telling you what happens in the movie, but yeah, there's not a lot here to like promote. Of the things I observed as far as 2004 high school / middle school movies go, this is one of those movies where the schools are allergic to black people. That amused me. The one time they have a black character is, oh, the prom queen's black, and then she immediately gets silenced by the king and told to sit down so he can bring up some other girl onto the stage, give her the crown. Great job, movie. So no, I don't need to extend much forgiveness to a film like this. It doesn't do anything for me, and it's weird. Like it just makes choices, and it's like okay. Yes, there are a lot of people in this that like, including Evan Peters, that would go on to be like bigger stars. Brie Larson's like
super forgettable in this.
Seventh build in here.
Yeah,
it's weird. It's not weird, but it's like they're all like 12, like 14, whatever. Like so, like all their voices are much higher, and so it's like it's so weird to see them all like much younger and seeing them giving these performances where it's like, yeah, there's nothing, no one's going on a talk show to be like, oh yeah, Sleepover, what a time that was. This is just like this thing that existed at one point. They made it and they all moved on with their lives.
Yeah, I am not the demographic for Sleepover. I wasn't when it was released, and I probably wasn't ever. Just because I'm not gonna. It's so therefore I'm not a fan of it. I didn't like it. The only fascinating thing is just to see this young pool of talent that I guess came from this movie, because I don't remember a lot of them before this. Except for the girl from Spy Kids. That's like,
yeah,
this was her. Like let's give her something. And I remember I did check out, like I didn't watch this back then, but I watched a couple scenes from it. Because Scout Taylor Compton got cast as Laurie Strode in Halloween, and this was the only notable thing she had been in. And I was like, what?
She's like 6th build.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my god! But I'm like, she must just crushed an audition because she's like super high pitched and why? I'm like, that's your okay, whatever. And then like visually, I felt like this. It looked like I was confused at the beginning of this movie because I felt like it was a high school girl picking on middle school girls. Like that's like one like Sarah Paxton looks a lot older, so much older.
Yeah, tall. She's taller,
older.
So it feels like a weird bullying thing happening.
Yeah. And I was like, is she picking on middle school kid? Is this like someone's sister? Like it was just really confusing to me.
She's actually younger than a few of them.
Yeah. But it was really weird. Steve Carell's I remember the trailer like selling Steve Carell's part a bunch for this.
Who's an
like the TV spot?
Minor? Who's the adult in that movie?
Unaccompanied minor?
That's the first Paul Feig movie, and that has like
I've never actually seen that.
I never watched that one. I'm not sure if I saw it.
I'll look. You keep talking. I'll look it up. It's
so
like another security guard type character.
This is one of those night of scavenger hunt, like, we're in trouble around town type thing, like similar to a New York Minute. I will say I'm noticing since we have like, oh yeah, okay,
Daily Show alums.
Yes, Daily Shows they're breaking out.
Yeah.
So there's like we've had New York Minute, as I mentioned, we have this, but before summer of 2004 at 20 starts, like we have Mean Girls, and I feel like there's this type of movie aimed at teen or elementary school, middle school girls that just died. Like we don't have that anymore at the multiplex. Like I you could go say, "Oh, Mean Girls the musical." They didn't make that for fucking queens. They cashed in.
Freeform and Disney Plus.
Right. But we don't get that at the theater. We were like having like one every couple like months here to try to aim at that. The 13 going on 30 probably could have gone in there, but that's an adult
I think
crossover.
it's one of a number of kinds of films that died out in the mid 2000s as the DVD boom ended and as the studios pivoted to, stereotypical big budget, all quadrant, quote unquote, general audience globally and whatever fantasy action franchise films.
And
yeah,
like I think animated makes the difference too. You go, you're Pixar's. You don't need to have Freaky Friday 2 still freaking.
Yeah, and now these girls are just watch TikTok and shit. Like now they're not gonna make movies for me. I'll just social media.
And this is tangentially related, is that you have Shrek in 2001 and then Shrek 2 in 2004, and then you have the 40-Year-Old Virgin and Knocked Up. So you have two famously female skewing franchises or genres that become male skewing for, the mid 2000s. Milestone point, because the female skewing romantic comedy was basically taken out to a field and shot.
Kate Hudson couldn't save it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Kate Hudson couldn't save it all.
But yeah, I mean, this is one of the many. I wrote about this in the 10th anniversary of Mean Girls 10 years ago. Jesus, about how those kind of movies just didn't exist anymore. And the reason why Mean Girls is still one reason why it's still as popular as it is that nothing really came along to take its place in terms of, generationally speaking.
It's, if you want to date this episode, it was very amusing to me to see something like, Mean Girls, which has successful and has its own afterlife. And then this week we get announced John Tucker Must Die too. Finally, here. And my
that wasn't even a hit in 2006.
My specific thought on that movie was, this movie's really, which I saw in theaters, is really bad, specifically because it's not smart in any way, like Mean Girls. And it's like, were people pining for more?
They were not.
Book Smart should have been that movie. Edge of 17 should have been.
Why see movies about real teenagers when you can see Spider-Man Homecoming?
And movies you're talking about, Brandon, those are what, A24 and what's Edge of 17? It's like
STX.
Yeah. Like they're in the little studios that
right, yeah. But I mean,
no, I know what you're saying. No, I know what you're
saying.
Yeah. It's the remnants, and even then it's still like adult skewing because there are. Like,
and they're at little studios because the big ones don't want to make them.
Yeah. The other thing about this movie, by the way, why I think it's completely fair to say it's just bad and not make an excuse. The messaging in the movie is fine because it is for the most. I mean, there's other things, but as far as be yourself. Everybody's themselves. Look your way, and people will find you attractive and all that. But the movie, curiously, is about 4 friends, or 3 friends, but they bring a new friend on there who's a larger girl, not on the poster. Very curiously, not on the poster.
Of course,
left her off. The other 3 are on there. Sarah Paxton's on there, looking super tall. It's almost like Honey.
Pedophiles got taste, man. Come on,
Honey, I Blew Up the Kids is happening on the poster,
right?
But they left the one that looks slightly different.
That is curious because there's 5, not 4. Yeah.
Just saying.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, yes, it's not a good movie. There's lots of better films being made in and around this time, even if you are in the target demographic.
Sam Huntington is so bad in this movie. I need to.
Everybody's going big in this, and it's bad.
The boys are specifically the girls.
Steve Carrell too. Yeah,
the boys. Yeah, the male side of this is very much going big. In a way where it's like
technically they shouldn't even be there.
This is so much. This is a lot. So it was. But the other thing, last week we talked Spider-Man 2, right? Which has Ursula, the chocolate cake girl.
Yes.
She has a cameo in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
In the bathroom where she's like on the phone and Jane Lynch is waiting for her to be off the phone. So, and her name is, what's her name? I wrote it down. It's
Magina
Magina Tova, who will appear later in the year in the SpongeBob movie as well. It's 2004,
know.
Dear Tova. That's
There
what
we
I'm saying. She's all over the place.
Here we go. Awesome.
And would anyone else think it was weird that they cast Summer Glau, arguably the most conventionally attractive woman in the cast, as sort of like the reject that needs to bloom or something?
What amusing? What amusing? The scene you're talking about is she is taking tickets for the dance that they're all going to. Like that's her thing.
Yeah.
And the girls, like the hero girls, they don't have their tickets to go to the dance, and they get up to the front and they're like, "Don't worry, I'll just talk my way through this." And she tells Summer Glau, she looks her dead in the face, and it's like, "Listen, we need to get to that dance." Because we don't want to sit at the shitty tables next year when we go to school, just like you did, and you don't have any. Like there, she's like,
it's
like putting her. It's basically a speech where she puts her down in like 7 different ways, and then says, "Let us do this for you because you're a loser, person I'd never met before, and if you let us go in the dance, then other people won't be losers like you are, clearly."
And
also,
worked.
and hold on, so
she stands up. She doesn't just like say go ahead. She's like, "You're right." You were right. You need to get in there. The people won't be losers like me.
And so Firefly had already come out and been canceled,
Oh,
and then
yeah, this was
she
not
was
like she
probably
was an
filming
unknown.
Serenity
Yeah,
right now.
right,
She's
yeah.
probably filming
There had been
Serenity.
some weird in joke. I mean, was Elise Gadusku busy or something? I don't know.
Well, she's also older. Like,
Yeah.
Summer Glau is like a kid in Firefly. That's kind of the thing.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah.
like just the whole
Anyway.
speech is geared towards let me make fun of you essentially in like all these different ways in order to make my point so you will agree with me.
It's gaslighting. Yes.
But for a good cause, sort of.
Sleepover, the gaslight.
You
Yeah.
gotta give them that dance so they can do a dance contest of some.
This movie sucked.
So yeah,
like,
if for some reason you're a tween girl listening to this podcast, and Mazel Tov, I guess.
I'm not even gonna show it to my daughter, and I'm like, this would be right up her alley.
The
But they're
Babysitter's
watching whatever's
Club
on Disney
Netflix
Plus now.
is fucking awesome.
No, there's
it ran for 2 seasons. It was really good. Start there.
There's the 30-ish something people now that saw Sleepover in 2004 and might have this like weird regressive memory of thinking, was that good? Was it the thing?
So we like Scout Taylor Compton signs on for Sleepover 2. Like, what? No, stop it.
The gang's getting back together.
Fucking John Tucker Must Die, a movie that nobody liked even 20 years ago. I was there. I remember.
Yeah.
But yes, we probably will see Sleepover Returns in a few years. That everyone will write about because they have to, because it's an IP, it'll get traffic, but it'll debut on not Netflix and get 1 million views on the opening week.
Crackle Sleepover 2 is going to be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So move on from Sleepover. Go to our TV ratings for this week.
CBS Tuesday. Just 4 teams remain.
I can't do that!
In a heart-stopping race to the finish.
Oh my God!
The Amazing Race season finale at a special time, 9/8 Central Tuesday.
It's a boring week, TV ratings wise.
How many simple are on there?
Oh, it's Simple Lives here. But it's not number 1. This week is 60 Minutes tops.
Wow.
Number 1 with 11.9 million viewers. The Amazing Race on CBS at number 2. I thought that show was more popular. I think that would
number 2 in the.
I wonder what the hell was on 60 Minutes that it finished number 1 for like
last year's winners of the Amazing Race.
Scott and I have been doing this 3 times now, and 60 Minutes has always been shown up because it's summer, but I don't think it's ever topped. It's always been in like a 5 to 8 pocket, but it has now topped the ratings. I'd have to go back. Listeners, let me know. You keep the stats. I don't.
Maybe Rooney took his shirt off. I don't know.
That's true. Number 3, The Simple Life on Fox.
Wait a minute.
Uh-oh.
Wait a minute.
What? Wait a minute.
July 11th, right?
Yeah.
The assassination of a prime minister happened or something?
While Scott looks this up, number 4 and 5 are Big Brother for Tuesday.
No, I apologize. I mean, it was
Tuesday and Thursday.
Basically, it was about an Iraq army soldier that was accused of desertion after he didn't want to fight in Iraq. Which, okay, fine. I thought it was, holy shit, that was the episode where they did the George W. Bush did not serve with honor shtick.
Oh, okay.
Obviously backfired for fair or not in a number of ways, and
Well,
basically still the end of conventional journalism as we know it.
Well, if Fahrenheit's like popular right now, people are probably tuning in more to something like things like this on 60 Minutes too. That track.
All right. Number 6, 48 Hours Wednesday on CBS. Number 7, For Love or Money on NBC.
Money.
Number 8, 60 Minutes 2 on CBS.
If you have enough money, you can buy love.
That's true. Vegas excels in it.
Paul said you couldn't do that though.
All right. Number 9, The Last Comic Standing on NBC. And number 10, Primetime Thursday on ABC. Their only entry into this top 10. Now we will move on to a grand epic of our times, King Arthur.
My father told me great tales of you, Arthur and his knights, and Guinevere.
They all met on a final mission.
He's called Merlin, dark magician.
That would change their destiny.
These people need our help.
And make them legends. Arthur, Guinevere, Lancelot, Merlin. From Jerry Bruckheimer, producer of Pirates of the Caribbean.
I now know my destiny.
Comes the true origins of King Arthur. Directed by Antoine Fuqua.
Written by David Franzoni. Starring Clive Owen, Keira Knightley, is it Ion Grufford? Yoan Grufford, Mads Mikkelsen, Joel Edgerton, Hugh Dancy, Ray Winstone, Ray Stevenson, and Stellan Skarsgård. A demystified take on the tale of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. This movie probably is a result of what we should call the Gladiator effect.
It's written by
the Gladiator, which is the problem.
You what?
Yeah. I said it's the everything effect, which is one of its problems.
Got you. Aaron, we'll start with you on King Arthur minus the fun stuff.
So I went to the Caribbean on vacation with my dad in June, the end of June, and came back around this time. And we had to stop in Philadelphia at the airport and have like a layover. We had a long layover, so we're like, let's go to the movies. It was super rainy outside. So we're like, yeah, movies, cool. And so we saw King Arthur. There's a second half of that story, but we'll do that in the next movie. At the time, I recall thinking like it was fine. It was like, okay, so yeah, it was certainly a take on King Arthur that I hadn't seen before, but I was like, we've talked about Clive Owen already with Asleep When I'm Dead. And I knew him from like I mentioned at the time, I knew him from like the BMW films and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, cool. King Arthur, Clive Owen, great, solid. As the years have gone by, my memory of it has gone down basically because I couldn't recall specific things outside of like set pieces or what have you. And I never saw the R-rated cut that came out when it came out on DVD and Blu-ray eventually. Is it on Blu-ray now? I assume it's on Blu-ray.
I think it is.
Figure it is. So watching it again, I watched the R-rated cut this time. This is only the second time I've ever seen it like in full. And I gotta say, this is better than I remember it being. I actually quite enjoyed it. I'm not gonna say it's a secret masterpiece or that it's like, anything better than what it perhaps could have been or whatever the fuck. But I mean, it's better than other King Arthur movies I've seen.
It was a launch Blu-ray title, one of the early ones.
Yeah, so it's probably a shitty Blu-ray. but regardless, Fuqua for me is literally hot and cold. Half of his movie, I looked at this on my letterbox list. Half of his movies I like, half of the movies I don't like.
His batting average is really good at this point, though.
At this point, yes, I'm enjoying it because I like Bait a lot. I like Training Day, obviously. It's
Tears of the Sun is probably his worst one at this point, right?
Of these four, sure. But the funny thing about King Arthur is it's essentially a medieval remake of Tears of the Sun. It's literally the same story. A group of hardened soldiers go across enemy lines to get something and come back again. It's literally like he did that. Finally, I got my test run out of the way. Let me do the medieval version of Jerry Bruckheimer. what I think works about this movie that I don't think works about Troy, the other big epic that's similarly in the post-Gladiator reign. I like the action more in this movie because it's more definable. Fuqua is a good action director, but there's more because it's scaled down to like a few characters that you're following as opposed to the armies, between the Trojans and the Greeks. This movie has a narrower focus, and I appreciate it because it feels like there was more flow to the action when there was action. Like I liked watching these battles play out because I could see the stakes in play. Also because the cast is fucking everybody. There's so many because it's a Jerry Bruckheimer movie, so you have all of these great British and European actors throughout this thing, and they're all playing, as you may recall, the best character in Troy, outside of Eric Bana, is Tyler Mane as Ajax. Everybody in King Arthur is Tyler Mane as Ajax in this movie. Everybody is so hardcore and into what they're doing, as opposed to being like, pathos filled and brooding off to the side like Brad Pitt as Achilles mistakenly was trying to do. This movie's just like, we fucking hate this. We want to be done with this. Get us the fuck out of here. We've done our duty. Okay, fine. One last mission. Let's go. And that's like the attitude they all have, but they all also respect Arthur. And I really enjoy that attitude that they bring to this. There's a certain kind of swagger between like Ray Winstone or Mads Mikkelsen or Johan Griffith, where I'm just like, I'm into the like how hardcore they are as far as like being great soldiers and being good at what they do. It's almost like a Predator kind of team as far as you just got like the toughest guys possible doing this stuff. And then Clive Owen, he is so like committed to being this version of Arthur who's like driven by his call to God and what have you, while still like making this a grounded movie where I'm like, I'm just into like the vibe of him, like what he's going for here. If you're gonna take away all of the fun stuff out of King Arthur as far as magic and Holy Grail quests and the kind of lively spirit that you see in any number of other King Arthur presentations, if you're gonna go for this gritty version of it, again, I'm not saying this movie's like a secret masterpiece or perfect, but I had a better time watching this than I figured I would have on the rewatch. Part of that might be because of the R rating. I'm not saying I need like the blood to make it better, but like there's something about it that just feels more. It flows better, I guess. Like like it's not a clean movie. There's just arms and heads and shit getting chopped up. Oh, the last thing, Stellan Skarsgård's fucking great in this movie. That's the other thing I mentioned. He is so good here as a guy that is over it. He's like, I'm so good at conquering shit, I don't even care anymore. I'm just gonna conquer shit because I feel like it. Like that's a sight to behold. I had a good time with this movie, more than I expected to.
Scott?
I enjoyed watching it again. It was the first time I had seen it I saw it in theaters, and then I watched the director's cut once when it came out on just regular DVD. And I hadn't seen it since, and I'm glad we were able to find the director's cut. Because I do think it is a better movie, partially because the action is pretty choppy in the PG-13 version because it was intended to be. And again, this is
shot R. Yeah.
One of my issues with the film is that I think it was greenlit as, okay, what if King Arthur in the mold of Gladiator and Braveheart and Troy, and well, not Troy because at the same time, but you get the idea. But then Pirates of the Caribbean came out and just made $650 million. Let's see if we can do this like PG-13.
Well, this is Buena Vista Disney, so yeah,
got skittish,
and it's like Lord of the Rings, but no magic, and there's a weird tone imbalance, I think, and it's trying to be, a progressive Iraq War parable, and I think a way that worked now and worked then and works now. Although I also think it's a very obvious attempt at inserting modern day values into a period piece. I mean, if you take a drink every time Clive Owen says freedom, you'll perish.
I mean, Keira Knightley embodies this notion. So
yeah.
Oh God, yeah, I haven't gotten to that.
Yeah.
And while this isn't a deal breaker per se, it's a very prototypical example of, it's this macho male battle story, but it's okay because the girl is ripped and like carries a weapon here and there. But that's okay, dudes, because he finds her, kidnapped in a dungeon near death and nurses her to health first. And it's sort of like trying to have all of its, the entire film, I think, is trying to have all of its cake, eat all of its cake too. That being said, especially in retrospect, we don't get movies like this anymore, blah, blah, blah. It was entertaining because, again, the cast is ridiculous and they're all doing the job. Mads Mikkelsen is terrific in a relatively early role. Clive Owen is giving what I would consider a somewhat prototypical Clive Owen performance, at least in a mainstream picture, but I like that. There's a reason I wanted him to play James Bond. And it's fine that he didn't. He had a long and interesting career regardless.
We got Children of Men because he didn't do James Bond.
Yeah. And so I think, especially this version, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's R-rated. It breathes. I think it's a solid 3-star picture that commercially never had a chance in hell. And even when I was a kid, I was like, this is a terrible idea, commercially speaking. Because,
it's
as
called
we
King
learned,
Arthur, and it doesn't have King Arthur stuff in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's just a mistake that Hollywood keeps fucking making. I mean, if you're going to do a King Arthur movie, do Excalibur with modern day special effects.
Right. Yeah.
Why is that so hard to say, okay, it's there, Excalibur, it's right there.
I mean, the best King Arthur movies are Excalibur and Sword in the Stone. Like, that's probably...
And fucking Aquaman, if you want to be weird about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only time that audiences actually showed up to a King Arthur movie.
They weirdly sold this as one based around the characters, too, where the posters don't say Clive Owen, Keira Knightley, and Yowen Griffith. They say Arthur, Lancelot, and Guinevere. It's like,
characters that I think most people associate either with the Disney cartoon or Monty Python, the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
It's
the Holy Grail. Yeah, I forgot. I was going with more serious tones, but yeah, the most accurate one
die
is
in that movie. It is serious.
The most accurate one is Monty Python, the Holy Grail. Like, oddly enough,
that's the most realistic sword fight I've ever seen.
Yes. When this movie trailer came out, I was like, no. I as much as I like Clive Owen and Keira Knightley, I just was like, I don't think I'm interested in this. Keira Knightley doesn't show up soon enough in this movie. It's like 50 minutes, I think, is when she shows up.
Yeah.
At least in the director's cut that we just watched. So I did not go see this in the theater, though I heard plenty of it. I went and saw our next feature in the theater, and this one was so damn loud in the theater next to it. Like, I could hear dialogue from that movie at times. It was loud. But I watched it on DVD. It was all right. I think Clive Owen's quite good in this movie. I was liking his ascendance. I really in the 2000s he was like an actor to watch. Like, he was great in movies and making interesting, good choices. Like Closer. I'd say this is probably a solid choice for a blockbuster. Interesting. Children of Men. Like, even Shoot 'Em Up. Like, let's fucking try it. He's making some cool choices.
Closer, later on this year, right?
Yeah, it's Closer this year. Okay, yeah. I couldn't remember which that was already out yet or.
Yeah, it's in the fall or in the winter.
Gotcha. Oh, he got nominated for an Academy Award for that one, right? Yeah. Too. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, he's like the actor to watch, and this one I'm not. It's funny. Here we are, Sleepover, another launching big cast here, which some of them are already set. Like Joel Edgerton, he had Attack of the Clones and some other things before it, but Mads Mikkelsen,
by default, was one of the biggest because I just been watching Horatio Hornblower movies, so I'm I know him,
right?
Compared to most of the rest of this cast.
And from this, take out Keira Knightley, Mads Mikkelsen's probably the biggest star of them all out of it.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah, okay, sure.
Now, yes. Now, Mads Mikkelsen's probably the biggest star. Yeah, him and and we have him and Hugh Dancy pre Hannibal here. Very interesting.
I just put that together.
Still in Skarsgård's pretty. I mean, he's not leading things, but he's in 6 of the biggest movies of all time.
He's he's legit. And you're talking about his performance. I'm like, is he one of those guys? I can't remember him giving a bad performance in something.
No,
he's always
engaging.
He's always good.
Yes.
Always good. Ray Stevenson, I like him a lot in things. R.I.P. But yeah, he's fine. This movie's just kind of fine. I don't not like it, but I'm also not gravitated to it or anything like that. It's kind of like, okay, it's exactly what you think it is. It's just, you take the majesty out of it and you just have what everyone else is doing at the time. It doesn't make it anything special. It's just like, okay, here's this. Maybe I think I probably like it better than Troy. Maybe. Yeah. I probably like it better than
Troy. So that's my thing right there.
Yeah, I like it better than Troy, but like, it's just like, yeah, you like King Arthur should be the special one. And then now you're doing like Roman stuff, and we had Greek stuff earlier this summer. You have, Roman stuff with Gladiator. Just like, hey, look at us do one like them, and it looks just like them, but isn't quite.
I don't mind that choice though. Like in theory, that's a neat idea. Like, what if we did King Arthur and we actually based it around the historical records that we were able to find? There's something inherently interesting about that. Whether or not it executes on it amazingly, that's whatever. But like, even if you're chasing after the buzz of Gladiator, we've had other King Arthur movies, we've had Calibers. Like, I'm not against like,
right,
okay,
no, not against it. There's some factor. I'm not talking about the action or the violence where I feel
it's
like
not even the action or violence, just the idea of doing something that dispels the myth aspect of it.
Well, no, that's not what I'm talking. I was saying some aspect of this, and I can't put my finger, like, just doesn't go hard enough. Like, it doesn't.
I agree
fuck
with you.
It doesn't fuck with it doesn't fuck with mythology enough. It doesn't have scenes that could challenge more or anything like that. Like, it's just this is how these movies go. This is how we go. We do it pretty well. So there you go. We have a good cast. We have all this.
So you're not going to get a lot of subversion generally.
Yeah,
it doesn't challenge the Arthur myth.
No.
Arthur is still the most righteous motherfucker that ever lived.
It doesn't and it doesn't screw with it either. And I guess it's trying to be historically accurate and stuff. But like, it just was kind of like almost biopicky, where it's like, this is when this happens, and this happens, and it's like, okay,
it's a stock Bruckheimer movie that happens to be set in this era. As opposed to anything else. Like, I get that. Again, like, I'm not saying I'm over the moon. I'm just saying I appreciate what it's going for, and I'm happy I liked it.
And I get the draw of that, the draw of doing that, and I think, we have this King Arthur movie, well, let's try to do a real, like, what if real life one, cool, but there's just something too basic about, like, there's some aspect that needs to go harder in this movie.
We're agreeing on this.
We're all agreeing. I'm just like, something needs to set as something. There's nothing to set it aside from the pack, and it needs it. Like that. It's King Arthur.
There's an entire conversation about why this was a stupid fucking idea in a commercial sense, and why its existence was sort of a prime example of how Hollywood reacts to successes in stupid ways. But as a movie in a vacuum, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we have what, Alexander. We still have Alexander coming this. It's like, this is the summer of Gladiator.
We have
Gladiator
Heaven coming next year, which is the same thing in flops, even though it's fucking great.
Well, that's when Ridley Scott goes, okay, motherfucker, let me show you how it's done. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me come back. Let me do it again.
Well, and that was the thing, is that the Gladiator formula wasn't as easily replicable as Hollywood. We can do this because like this, and not to go into one of my TED Talk stump speeches, but like, the next Harry Potter is Twilight, which is nothing like Harry Potter. You make more money from the first Harry Potter than the next Harry Potter.
I mean, you're talking about,
you get to make more of them.
And
you're talking about, you're talking about like the way risk works, though. I hear you on that. It's the idea of, you can see maybe it coming, it's not going to be commercial, but it's like King Arthur. It's not like they filmed it in 2003 when Pirates was like, I mean, they're filming it. That's because it's been in development for like a long time. It wasn't an easy shoot. I'm aware of that.
No.
I know Fuqua not super happy about how it came out. It's not like they had like the reference point to be like, Pirates just made a shit ton of money. We need to, we can't just stop what we're making and reshoot every single thing to make it fit in now this model. They're still going after Gladiator, which I think is that's a viable idea. Let's take this thing that people know, King Arthur, and let's do it in a way that just scored a Best Picture win. I don't think that's inherently stupid.
Well, and what's funny is Aaron,
had they released it as a 2 hour, 20-minute R-rated movie, would have performed better. Maybe, I don't know, it would be a better movie.
Well,
and you always wonder, would that have mattered?
Aaron had a funny point about the poster being like Lancelot, Arthur, Guinevere. It's like, yeah, because
marketing.
the only people anyone know on the poster is Keira Knightley, like household name wise.
Yeah,
and she looks nothing like Guinevere.
So it makes me wonder what happens if you put this movie out in November? Like, what if it's a Thanksgiving release? What's the difference there? Does that make it seem more prestige all of a sudden because it is fitting in a certain kind of realm? But
I mean, watching this, there's like this movie. I'm like, yeah, this is not an Oscar movie. Even
no
way. Yeah,
it's not. But do you think it would convince a certain audience that it could be because it's coming out at this time? Where I think like Last Samurai doesn't scream Oscar movie to me, but it's still a December movie that has a certain kind of like it's Edward Zwick and Tom Cruise. Of course,
I feel like this is the spring break movie.
Yeah,
the March movie,
yeah, the big spring break movie. That's what this feels like. Yeah,
I can see that too. That's
it. Also, I mean,
Gladiator is a super kickoff movie, so I mean,
Last Samurai is better. I think that's
no, it is. It's a better movie. I agree. I'm just in terms of like what an audience is looking at.
Well, Last Samurai sells itself as this could be an Oscar contender.
Well, it's Tom Cruise
with all that, yeah.
Like that makes plenty. Like that tracks better than what I'm saying. Yeah. It's just more of a playing a what if kind of game. That's also as far as why I think I like this movie. I just hate those fucking Equalizer movies so much. So like I feel like it's a breath of fresh air for me to watch Fuqua that's good again. I think that's helping. Because the most of the misses when it comes to Fuqua are from this later half of his career.
But it's funny. This feels like it would have been his blank check movie after Training Day and not like coming after Tears of the Sun. Because I had to check. I'm like, wait, he had one between Training Day and this. And I was like, oh, it's Tears of the Sun. Okay.
Well, Tears of the Sun, though, I mean, it's set in Africa. I mean, it's doing certain things that I feel like he wouldn't necessarily be afforded to if he didn't have some cachet to work with. Where this is like Jerry Bruckheimer needs a guy to direct a bunch of people in a medieval epic. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, I don't think Fuqua is bad. It's just he's made some bad movies. He's not. Yeah, it's a frustrating career.
He's not bad. I don't find him amazing. I think he is a competent studio filmmaker.
Right? Yeah. No. Absolutely.
He's a craftsman. He's a journeyman, and also
his best pictures are behind him.
During a period, the mid 2000s to mid 2010s, when the R-rated adult skewing action movie was almost an endangered species, especially outside of Lionsgate, he was sort of keeping it alive. And
in R-rated action movies for adults.
Yeah. And or PG-13 ones that were also, let's be honest, for adults.
Skewing towards R, yeah.
Yeah. Him and Tony Scott.
Yeah, smart or dumb, shooter.
Oh God. Swagger. That scene cracked me up.
I do appreciate Shooter in that it's the most conservative skewing movie you can imagine, but it's politics. It's basically, what if Michael Moore made a movie like this? But anyway, I enjoyed this more than I expected to upon a rewatch.
Yeah, I was looking forward
separating the what I would argue cynicism around its being greenlit and the choices that were made to compromise what was already a iffy proposition in the first place as a movie. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I enjoy. I was looking forward to watching this one again. It'd been like probably since 2004, 2005 since I'd seen it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is one on there that I'm like, okay, let's go back to that. On a Keira Knightley high, watching these Pirates movies we have done all the commentaries for. So I'm like, yeah, this was her kicking off in her prime. Domino comes, but she's not bad.
Wait, does that mean I survived on Stranger Tides?
These are the in memoriam celebration episodes.
You're Randy in Scream 3 right now.
Right.
You're Joe Pants in Bad Boys Ride or Die.
Right.
It's funny.
You are Judi Dench in Spectre.
I referenced that when I was talking about the Bad Boys trailer. I was like, I'm so glad they didn't bring him back from the dead. Instead, they had him do a videotape just like Spectre and Scream 3. And I thought, and I didn't think about it afterwards. Okay, I hate both those movies. Uh-oh. By the time you listen to this, we'll know if Bad Boys Ride or Die is any good.
That's true. Oh, the ice. It does have the big ice battle sequence, which I do
That
like.
is cool. Yeah.
I
Oh,
like
they got
that
some
one.
good bow and arrow shooting sequence.
It's got
Like,
good bow and arrow, but that ice set piece in general, I think, is really cool. Like it's a at the time it's a unique place because we haven't seen that since Napoleon last year.
Yeah.
Not a lot of room for ice battles, barely. Probably expensive because this movie, we'll talk about box office later. But it's a cool sequence. You get Ray Stevenson doing some cool stuff. You get the best line in the movie when Johan Griffin says something and Keira Knightley's like, "Don't worry, I won't let them rape you." It's really funny. I'm like, it's like this
Lots
seems
of
like
lonely men out there.
It seems like one of the scenes where they like storyboarded and knew exactly what they wanted out of it and got 100% what they wanted out of it.
the final battle does have some good dramatic weight to it decently. Yeah, it does.
I
mean,
like the final battle because there's, other than Arthur, everyone is theoretically expendable.
Yeah.
So there is suspense in terms of, although, again, it's the classic Patriot lesson where if you're not the main hero, do not fucking try to fight the main villain. You will die.
But don't worry, no one else will fight you while you're trying to do this. Like that's
that too. Yes.
Everyone will leave you guys alone while you're doing this thing.
Okay.
And arguably the same thing. If you're not the main villain, and the top billed hero is challenging you to a duel, run away.
Because they know they're in a movie. Okay. We will now mosey on down to Ryan Seacrest's weekly top 40.
American Top 40 with Ryan Seacrest. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. American Top 40.
Big changes this week, guys.
Okay.
Number 10, On Fire by Lloyd Banks. Jumping in here. Also debuting in the top 10, Move Ya Body, Nina Sky featuring Jabba. Touch Jabba. Number 8, dropping a spot, Freak a Leak by P.D. Pablo. Bumping up one spot this week from 8 to 7. Yeah, Usher featuring Ludacris and Lil Jon. Slow Motion by Ludacris is moved down one spot. Number 5, moving down one spot, If I Ain't Got You by Alicia Keys. Number 4, also dropping a spot, The Reason by Hoobastank. Number 3, Confessions Part 2 from Usher, dropping one spot. Dropping out of the top 10. Burn by Usher. And debuting in the top 10.
Here we go.
Debuting in the top
we
10
go.
at number 1, I Believe by Fantasia.
Look at that.
American Idol gets them hits. But yeah, that's a drop. That's it. I don't think we've had a debut in the top 10 at number 1 for Scott in all our years of
Color of this chart just got purple.
Oh, very good. So, yeah. So Fantasia, congratulations. You believed. Now move on to our main movie, Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy.
0.4 million years of evolution have all led to one magnificent specimen. Perfection. Man's man.
4002. Oh, I could barely lift my right arm because I did so many.
Ladies' man.
Oh, Ron. Let's make a baby!
Anchorman.
Cannonball!
Will Ferrell.
Huh? You know I don't speak Spanish.
Anchorman. Rated PG-13. Starts Friday, July 9th everywhere.
Directed by Adam McKay. Written by Will Ferrell and Adam McKay. Starring Will Ferrell, Christina Applegate, Paul Rudd, David Koechner, Steve Carrell, Fred Willard, Chris Parnell, Catherine Hahn, Fred Armisen, Seth Rogen, and Vince Vaughn, and plus lots of cameos. I'm not doing that. We're going to get to the movie. In the 1970s, an Anchorman stint as San Diego's top-rated newsreader is challenged when an ambitious newswoman becomes his co-anchor. So, Scott, how much did you laugh at Anchorman?
This is the first time I had seen this film since theaters. I had watched the
Wow.
Good Morning, the alternate cut at some point when it came out on DVD.
Wake
there
up,
were so many
Ron Burgundy.
Yeah. I mean, for those who don't remember or don't know, there were so many deleted scenes and alternate subplots and that's not a bad thing. That's the way the process worked back then. That they basically released an entire second movie using mostly deleted footage as a secondary DVD. But anyway, I was never huge on this picture. By that I mean I like Dodgeball better, and frankly, there's other Will Ferrell comedies I like better. Talladega Nights, Blades of Glory, Anchorman 2, frankly. I actually rewatched that one after I watched this one, just because I hadn't seen that since theaters. I think that one is a tighter, more disciplined, even though it's a little longer. I think it's a sharper, more disciplined picture. This is more of a, excuse for improv riffs here and there. I think the first act is almost aimless. I remember thinking in the theater, oh my God, this is just sitting there dying on the vine. It gets better. And watching it again, I was amused by how many moments and beats and scenes have sort of become ingrained into pop culture, to the point that I had forgotten exactly where they came from necessarily. The point that, that's Will Ferrell doing something. I don't know which movie. Oh, it's Anchorman. And a lot of them are in like the opening scenes, actually. But that being said, I mean, it's a solid 3-star picture. It's colorful, it's clever, it has fun playing in the 1970s news milieu. It's another example of, the conversation about diversity, inclusivity, and mass market entertainment was not invented in the 2010s. But we're just 2004, we're just a year out from Michael Clark Duncan playing Kingpin in the Daredevil movie. That being said, it works as sort of a prototypical Will Ferrell movie in terms of him examining masculinity through the notion of, the extent that popular culture is basically run by cartoonish, willfully cartoonish exaggerations of stereotypical masculinity. That's not exactly a hot take. I mean, these movies are 20 years old, but and stuff like that, Talladega Nights, the Campaign, which was a very bleak, especially in retrospect, political comedy with him and Zach Galifianakis. This one, obviously it's quoted a lot. It was very influential. It inspired frankly, one of the only decades later sequels of this nature that wasn't a piece of dog shit. So kudos. Looking at you, Dumb and Dumberer and Zoolander #2. But on its own, I think it's fine. Even that summer, I preferred Dodgeball. I thought it was funnier. I thought it was more of a comedy movie versus a series of improv sketches. Some of the cameos are very funny, especially the extent that we've been talking about Jack Black as a kid-friendly movie star. It was fun watching him, show up and murder a dog, or so we think, because the movie's a coward. But I think it has earned its popularity and it's earned its quote unquote legacy. But I think it was sort of a gateway for, I would argue, our stronger Will Ferrell comedies. And that's okay.
All right, Aaron.
And I think the sequel's better.
Well, I mean, the Sleepover crowd may be really upset with us. Like that movie, but the Anchorman crowd fortunately doesn't have to sit through more of a Scott's ambivalence, because I fucking love this movie. The other half of the Philadelphia layover story is that we saw King Arthur, and we walked out of the theater, and my dad were like, "Yeah, that was fine." And we looked outside, it's like, it's still raining heavily. Let's go see another movie. And so we went and saw Anchorman, and we had a ball. If you ask my dad what one of his favorite movie scenes of all time is, he's going to say when Jack Black punched the dog off the bridge in Anchorman. That is
Dude, I showed this to my son when we were watching. His eyes, like, he saw this, and I showed him Tropic Thunder, and he's seen a side of Jack Black that he had no idea existed, and has been like, because he just saw Tropic Thunder, he's like, I've never heard Jack Black cuss before. And then he sees him punt the dog off the thing. He's like, what?
Yeah, unprompted. You could ask my dad, just, what's one of your favorite movie scenes about? He would say this scene. That's the impact it had. I think this movie's hysterical. It has the kind of comedic anarchy of, like, early 80s Bill Murray stuff that I really appreciate, where it's less about like, oh, I hope the plot's great, and more about like, yes, let's just see a bunch of bits and see character work that's really well defined because they just know who they're playing, regardless of how much it applies to a specific arc or a certain kind of story it wants to tell, which it does have. And yes, you could argue Anchorman 2, which I also like a lot, and I also rewatched this week and still like a lot. You could argue, yes, there's more because McKay is advanced at this point as a filmmaker, and there's just ideas there that he clearly wants to explore, which he's done in all of his movies since.
Anchorman 2 is a nice surprise because at the time it was like, oh, everybody's desperate, and then you go,
Yeah.
oh, this is the wow, okay.
They had a good idea.
I had a lot of
reason
faith
to
in it.
exist.
I had a lot of faith in it because Farrell specifically did the best thing possible as far as I like these people I'm working with. I'm going to keep making movies with them as opposed to I'm going to keep making sequels to the same thing. He waited a good long time before he finally made one sequel to something. Which
Well, because like Ricky Bobby feels like it's the sequel to this rather than, that's what comedy sequels I always say should do. Get the gang back together, make another funny movie.
Exactly. Let them
You
just
follow
keep
up
doing the
Tommy
thing.
Boy with Black Sheep.
Yes.
Yeah. And miracles like that happen sometimes too. Regardless, this movie, we were talking about Dodgeball and like things like which movie I find funny, but it does to me it feels like the warm up round for this movie, and it comes down to like the way they're delivering certain things. Where there's that bit in Dodgeball where Ben Stiller like describes the whole thing and then says, "And yes, a significant donation from my father, Earl Goodman." That's what Anchorman's like entirely that like that, and that's why I like it. There's a very specific thing that every character is grasping onto that I really appreciate. Farrell, especially in the way he does, beyond just like the broad stuff and things I can easily quote. It's things like he's like, if you want to fight, I have my fist right here. Jack Johnson and Tom O'Leary. Just like there's names he's pulling that are like either obscure references or like whatever that just define something so much better than simply having a fun gag. There's something there that like they want to that comes through all the riffs and all the stuff that I just find hysterical because I key into that so distinctly. In addition to yes, the broad stuff with like Brick or like the big Anchorman news fight, which I also find it like if you're laughing, you're laughing. It's like I can't tell Scott to like this more, to laugh more at something because it's comedy. Like it's not it is what it is. As far as I'm concerned, I see so much here that comes from a level of creativity where yes, it's coming out of let's keep doing this until we have something that we can all agree is like the best of these things. But I like all the things that they come up with. I look at the mountains of deleted footage and what have you, and I have to think like there are 3 of the hardest edited movies of all time. Annie Hall, which deletes an entire entire storyline. Mad Max Fury Road, which is 600 hours of footage, and this fucking movie where it's like they have a whole other thing. Like literally that's about like bank robberies and all kinds of stuff. There's like Scott's not kidding. There is a 90-minute other movie consisting of entire subplots that just weren't working. And even they even acknowledged that in like the opening narration is like, or a test not like it's the fact that this movie exists and as successful as it is, as far as years later, everyone knows at least one line from it. That's not nothing. And yeah, we can talk more about like the various bits and stuff after you go, Brad. But I mean, there's so many things here that I just really, really like about this. But the 70s thing works for me. I think the soundtrack of the movie is fantastic. Like there's so many like cool things going on just from the aesthetic choices, as flimsy as they may be, because this is a very clearly cheaply made movie by comparison to other Farrell comedies that will come. The fucking Ricky Bobby looks like a blockbuster.
$70 million.
Like if you want to talk about directors that can do action, I look at McKay and think of this and the other, or that and the other guys. Think this guy could do an action movie. Like I can see that.
I will say, and tomato, whatever. One of the I remember when I first saw Ricky Bobby, it felt like the most epic comedy ever made in terms of its size and its scale and its cast of thousands more or less.
It does have a leg up as far as I can do this now because they go
right. They know people want that.
And he has like I think that's like the second unit team from Bourne doing the car racing action. That's why the car racing action looks as good as it does. So
and again, I like this movie. I by default I like it less than
everyone because I like this movie a lot too. And so Will Ferrell was one of the most anticipated actors from Saturday Night Live to jump to movies of all time. Like he was getting ready to, he had Old School, but it wasn't his. And well, I mean, he was a big part of that cast. And then
I loved Old School, by the way.
Oh yeah, Old School is good. No, Old School is good. And so here we are with Anchorman and him, mustache, all that. It's like, okay, this is going for it. And I saw this movie opening day. I saw it on Friday for like first showing in the afternoon, and I went with a friend of mine, and we laughed pretty good about it, but then we like quoted it a lot after randomly, just like stuff you weren't even thinking was gonna stick with you, and then like the next time I saw it, I thought it was even funnier than the first time. Like it was an odd movie. Like Scott, I think you're onto something too. We weren't used to this level of improv being tossed in a comedy movie too, so it's really fresh. This ends up becoming the Will Ferrell movie formula going forward and over and over and over again. But it was fresh here. And this is like the last gasp of comedy, this era of Will Ferrell movies, and like, Vince Vaughn gets thrown into them, Get Your Wedding Crasher, stuff like that, before the Apatow stuff starts taking over and all the improv becomes like pop culture referential humor. Like it's well, your face looks like Don Rickles took a dump down a Chevy, blah, blah, like it becomes all that rather than, No,
I mean, Ferrell still makes hit movies after this.
Yes.
But like from 2000, from Elf to Semi-Pro was only like a 5-year span.
Yeah.
I like Semi-Pro, by the way.
Semi-Pro is good.
It's got some jokes in it that I really like.
I like Semi-Pro.
And it has a surprisingly good Woody Harrelson dramatic plot line.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's almost a better drama than comedy. And that's not an insult.
And while we're talking Will Ferrell, Paul Rudd, this completely changes him, this movie. Yes. He was a dramatic actor before this.
Yeah.
And he had that rom-com with Jennifer Aniston. He had that little movie nobody saw with Reese Witherspoon, the Overnight Delivery or whatever. Was that Reese Witherspoon and him?
That's him, and then he has another one with Reese Witherspoon.
Okay.
No, that's Ruffalo. I'm thinking.
Clueless.
That one's just like heaven.
Clueless. Clueless, but he's just used as like the hot guy, and just he's not the comedic thing.
Romeo plus Juliet.
Yeah. So here he is, hilarious, looking ridiculous. Like you never imagine at that point, you'd never thought that Paul Rudd would be this guy to take a movie like this. This was like such a change for him, and then this suits him off to like his superstardom that he's in now. He does a comedy, Role Models. I like that movie quite a bit.
Great.
And he's able to bounce from like comedy series, like it's an interesting. He becomes his career.
To be fair, Wet Hot American Summer is also unlocking Paul Rudd in that man. It's not a.
Who's seeing that one?
Let me say.
It's
not as big of a hit. But it's not as though he was.
It's actually. I actually saw that one on DVD, like the night of the premiere of Spider-Man 2, because we watched that at Randy's house, friend of the show, Randy Schaefer.
Yeah.
And then we went off to the midnight screening of Spider-Man 2.
Oh, okay.
Random, whatever. Yeah.
So this movie, and I remember in the theater, the news fight scene, the news anchor fight scene, hearing the because cameos like that didn't always happen, like in these movies. Like, there's a lot of
stacking of it. Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff taken for granted that Anchorman starts or was unusual for having that it has, and that Anchorman fight scene was just unreal.
Oh, yeah, that was terrific.
And it's funny because things have changed so much that like I said, I show this to my son, and it's like, oh, it's Luke Wilson. Oh, it's this. Who's that guy? Tim Robbins. He has no clue who Tim Robbins is. He's never seen him in anything or whatever. He's not in much anymore. He's like, what? Who's that? I'm like,
and
Dad from Zathura?
Something that crossed my mind when I was watching the second one is I imagine people would write think pieces today about 20 years later you couldn't do Ben Stiller and playing a Mexican character. It's like, well, they couldn't in 2013 either because he's not in that scene when they reprised that.
Yeah.
He's like the only major cameo that's not there.
San Diego news in the first one.
Yeah.
It would break the fabric of reality if you did that.
Right. And I like look this even like the little look. Catherine Hahn is there right there in the background. Christina Applegate's tremendous.
Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen. Applegate's one of our best comedic actresses we ever had, and just able to play straight, funny, do stuff, not keel over and be tempted to bait into like what Will Ferrell's doing.
She goes entirely toe to toe with him.
Toe to toe.
Have a lot of fun. It's very. It's there is not a weak link here as far.
There
as
is no better person they could have cast across from him. Like I have to say that. Like there is no like she's perfect. They nailed it casting wise.
And one reason I like the sequel is one of the rare comedy sequels they don't write out the female lead of the first one.
Yeah,
they don't fridge
like Zoolander #2.
Wow, wasn't there a divorce before?
There was a separation. And they got back together.
Gotcha.
Because Zoolander 2 must have brought them together.
Hey, dude, that's great.
Thank you for that. Is that a Nickelodeon show that we can't talk about anymore without thinking bad things? Probably not. It's a scripted one as opposed to one of those.
That's the way we became the Stiller Bunch. All right, so, I have not watched that yet. I might have by the time this airs.
You talk about the fight thing.
Vince Vaughn is great in this movie, by the way, too.
Yeah,
Dorothy Mantooth is the saint, and on the bikes, like that's brilliant stuff. Like it's
as we talked about with Dodgeball, I was so in the Vince Vaughn zone at this point between those two and Old School. I was just like because you want to talk about unlocking comedy. These are the movies that unlocked him from being in the
right the weird drama, dark drama,
doing domestic disturbance and start doing fucking Dodgeball. This is
what I think it is, and because the first third of the movie, it's mostly the four of them, give or take, riffing amongst each other with no conflict because they all love each other and they all agree with each other about everything. And then as the film progresses and they actually butt heads with people that don't like them or don't agree with them, I think it's a funnier picture as that goes along.
Well, I think part of that gap, this portion of the picture, Scott, there is like, I think they have a feeling or something that they know that we're trying some stuff with comedy that general audiences aren't going to be used to. We need to lull them into getting on the same level with us before we get onto this part of the movie.
Lull is a good word.
Well,
I will say, frankly, I just disagree. I think
it's funny.
I think the ending is the weakest portion of the film. I think it starts off, I'm already like where I need to be as far as I get this character. I get these people. I'm happy just hearing them do things together. It's funny to me.
Well, go back to Vince Vaughn real quick. It's such a weird fucking like, how did we meet and get to know and go? How did Vince Vaughn break out to where people want to put in movies? Swingers, where he's a funny character, charismatic, bubbly, and so let's stick him in The Lost World. Let's stick him in Psycho. Like, what are we like? It's a real weird like. We liked him for this, but let's keep making him do this,
It's not dissimilar from like, let's shove all these, the Sam Worthingtons and Taylor Kitsch's into things. There's a hot property that people responded to. What can we test them out with that will stick? And it's not like the films he was doing were all necessarily bombs. I mean, he was in a Spielberg movie, so that's by default going to be.
You don't turn down a Spielberg movie, even if you're wrong for the part.
Gus Van Sant's coming off
unless you're Pete Postlewaite, they had to ask him twice.
Gus Van Sant's coming off the biggest success of his career, so it's like, yeah, okay, he's going to do a Psycho thing. I guess I'll say yes to this. Whatever.
If you're a young actor, would you like to play Norman Bates with this all-star cast? Fuck yes.
And the director of Good Will Hunting, yeah.
And then there's like frankly, the other stuff's just kind of like smaller indie stuff that you can do, where it's like it's Clay Pigeons. Or
had that one with
Return to Paradise.
Return to Paradise, yeah.
Like just smaller things where, there's no risk for him to do these kind of movies. But yeah, then he just jumps into comedy. And suddenly it's like, because it's like Swingers is a thing. He's funny in it, but like, it's not zany and like wacky in the way that Dodgeball and this and Old School are. They have a very distinct kind of hardcore comedy thing where Swingers is just like a slightly heightened reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, they're allowing to, I think the comedies are allowed to get a bit more gut puncher, so he's allowed to just let loose more than
he
maybe
knows how
may
to
have
riff.
let him in the 90s. Yeah, he gets a lot of riff, and
he knows how to improv with those guys, which
yeah, him
works.
and Farrell have good chemistry. Of course, old school this, like, so there we have it there. But
the thing I was going to say about the battle thing at the time, because you're talking about like this thing that you're not really like seeing, there's also like there's no YouTube, there's no TikTok or whatnot, so you can't like see clips of this or even the way they're advertising this movie. You're not knowing the stuff that's going to be in it because it's weird. So like they don't know to advertise this or that, and they're not going to spoil certain things. So when you see this movie at the time, I think part of the odd, because we'll talk about the box office, but it's not like a giant hit. But I do think there's this kind of running energy from it because people were talking about it in a way where it's like, this movie has like this insane sequence where all these comedy people get together. Like there's ways to talk about that kind of spread the buzz on this thing in a way.
It probably sold a shitload of DVDs too.
Easily.
Mm-hmm.
They've released like 4 different Blu-rays for this movie. Like,
right. Like, yeah. And the jokes of this, like, the Baxter stuff, I don't speak Spanish. And you pooped in the refrigerator and you ate a whole wheel of cheese. I'm not even mad. I'm impressed.
I like Ron the most also. As far as Will Ferrell's characters go, I can appreciate the arc that Ricky Bobby has. Step Brothers, I'm just not as into as many other people are. I find it funny, but that just doesn't do a whole lot for me. But like the other guys, I like that character, but it's not one was like I need to see more of him. Ron, I like Ron Burgundy. There's something there with him where whether it's because he's so buffoonish or because he's playing more of a character because he's affecting an accent and all this stuff. There's just something about the Ron Burgundy character where I'm happy to see this guy more often than any of the
there's like a stupid ignorance that where like the when in Rome stuff, like on paper that sounds like a dumb joke, but they make it work.
Yeah,
like it's like what this guy, and they're like, yeah, maybe
it's like a weird charisma that he.
Yeah,
like, he's literally he's convinced everyone in San Diego that he's the best newscaster. It worked on me. I mean, like,
this one is a great use of a your F-bomb in a PG-13 movie as well. Great use of that.
And defies the general rule of how you can use the F-bomb in a PG-13 movie.
Well, and I like the idea that they have Christina Applegate like didn't realize it was going to get him fired. Like, and she's like legitimately like, oh crap, I didn't mean to do that. And I do like this movie quite a bit. I hadn't watched it in a while. I need to go back to the second one again too, because I remember I haven't seen the second one since the theater, but I really liked it. I remember being impressed with like, holy crap.
It has a lot of people. I mean, it's not surprising, but there's a lot of like Dylan Baker's like a major supporting character in there. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. He's really funny.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it was a nice run of movies for Farrell with just doing these little things. Like where could I focus like a focused area, a very specific focused area, and a really zany character to create out of it. And I like semi-pro. That's an interesting aspect of sports that he tackled too. Like historically, like
he does all these sports movies, which is like pretty cool to think about.
Yeah, the ABA. If you've ever read up on the ABA, like his movie is not far off, like from how crazy that league was.
It's the
Eurovision was very much an attempt to recapture that.
Yeah, Eurovision was the
Semi-Pro is the closest we get to like a slap shot kind of redo as far as having that sort of energy. Blades of Glory I enjoy for not only the Farrell stuff, but because we talked about Napoleon Dynamite. That movie makes Johnny Hader eat so much shit throughout the film. I feel like I liked that movie more because of how much I didn't like Napoleon.
But I think he's very well utilized there.
He is well utilized.
It serves him
there's a certain like I don't know enjoyment I get out of him like eating so much shit in that movie. But
and of course, they were obviously married at the time, but Poehler and Arnett are terrific together in that picture.
Oh yeah, I mean that movie's got a lot of stuff.
I like that one quite a bit.
The other like as far as like Will Ferrell stuff go, like this is at this point for me, I'm like coming out of the Sandler phase of stuff, right? Because he's comedy king. Him and Carrell are comedy kings like from the mid 90s onwards to the early 2000s. And their stuff's slowing, right? Or Sandler's isn't slowing, but like
Sandler isn't slow till like the end of the decade.
earlier this year is Eternal Sunshine, which is his
Mm-hmm.
best performance. But like the Sandler stuff, there's still like ones like is like Zohan's like a few years after those at this point.
That's
But
sort of the offhand. That's one of the last gaps. And, again, he had a hell of a run. I
but
mean,
there's but
in
the
the late 90s, the early 2000s, he's, in terms of rate of return, he's probably the biggest star in Hollywood.
but the ones I'm like,
yeah, you're getting those, and then like all the like scary movie, not another tea. That's what comedy's at.
So like Pharaoh coming along to kind of like this brand, the frat pack, right? Is like it's like okay, like I am into what this is doing, and I mean we talk about the Apatow stuff. It's not like I don't like the Apatow. Like I like 40. I Knocked Up. I think is still his best movie. I like Knocked Up a lot. Like there's
wait. You said that Dodgeball was the appetizer for Anchorman. Was Knocked Up the appetizer for Superbad?
I like Knocked Up more than Superbad.
Okay.
I like that story more. I like
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, of those,
Apatow, I mean, it's not his fault that people looked at his successes and said, we don't want to make romantic comedies with women anymore.
Those, it's not even like the Apatow one I like the most. It's Forgetting Sarah Marshall. That's the
that one's
No, they were all generally good movies, and even
like I guess the big
Apatow, whatever, he's not involved per se, but I think Role Models is fantastic.
No, Role Models, no, that's what I was just saying.
You want an example of a
like
great action scene in a movie that's not an action movie.
The end
right? Yeah,
yes.
No, Role Models is awesome.
Like, why does this have better action than The Dark Knight? What the fuck?
Well, yeah, Apatow was like king until like about Funny People came, and it was supposed to be this movie that was going to change all our lives for some reason, and then it was like okay, and then he does this is 40, and everybody's like, fuck this guy. Like, okay,
he tries to become James L. Brooks, but it's like
right, yeah.
You're not quite pulling off James L. Brooks just yet. I don't care how many Albert Brooks you put in your movie. You can't just quite be James L. Brooks all of a sudden.
Right.
Meanwhile, McKay like leveled up big time. Is like, I'll just do prestige films now and
get The Big Short.
Let me win an Oscar and get multiple Best Picture nominations
for one of his worst movies. Vice.
Vice.
Okay. Great.
Gotcha.
I like Don't Look Up.
Yeah. All right. So Scott, did Anchorman take down Spider-Man 2 this week at the box office? Oh,
but not for lack of trying.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
Spider-Man 2 was the #1 movie of the weekend, earning $45 million, dropping 49% from its $88 million Friday to Sunday opening of $188 million over 6 days. Interesting trivia. Obviously, Spider-Man is still a huge hit, yada, yada, yada. But Spider-Man 2 would earn in its second weekend basically what Spider-Man 1 earned in its third weekend, when that film's competition was Star Wars Attack of the Clones, which, spoiler, made a shit ton more money in its opening weekend than the other films we're going to talk about. Anyway, Spider-Man 2, 256 after 12 days. It would leg out to 373 domestic. 785 worldwide. Again, spectacular by any rational imagination. Just not as big as the first one.
Good descriptor. Spectacular Spider-Man.
Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, opens with $28 million and legs out to, it doesn't quite leg out. It only ends up with 85 million domestic, which is fine. The film cost 26 million to make.
There you
go. It earns a whopping 5 million overseas. For a $90 million global total,
and $8 billion on DVD,
something like that. I cannot find the DVD sale numbers, but I will take your word on that. Interestingly enough, the sequel, when the inflation notwithstanding, when the sequel opens in late 2013 at a budget of $50 million, which isn't bad, all things considered, it would earn 127 million domestic, 46 million overseas for 174 million worldwide. So again, that's an example of a comedy sequel that's noticeably more successful than its predecessor, which then and now is not normal. That just doesn't happen all that often.
Those Christmas legs didn't really push 2 very far, did it?
No, it really didn't. It opened on a Wednesday. It did something like hold on, let me figure.
Was it 2016?
26 million over 3 days. It opened on a Wednesday. It would do 39 million over its Wednesday to Sunday, and then it would leg out to 125, which is
it's not bad by
again, it's very good. You tripled its budget. and it had an extra R-rated cut in theaters that earned, $6
I remember
or
when they did
whatever.
that. Yeah. It came out like Oscar weekend.
Yeah, $2.1 million. But anyway, yes, Anchorman is genuinely a success. But again, it's a movie that I think its post-theatrical legacy and its ongoing popularity is disproportionate to its actual theatrical success. Obviously, that's not a criticism. That's good when that happens, as long as the movie is actually a hit in theaters. That's where people tend to get tripped up. Again, it's an Austin Powers thing. Yes, Austin Powers was huge on VHS, but it didn't bomb in theaters. However, King Arthur did bomb in theaters. Coming in.
No!
You don't say.
I'd also open on a Wednesday for some weird reason that I don't entirely understand. Because people were lining up around the block for King Arthur. You had to get the hardcore fans out of the way so the regular audiences could go on Friday and Sunday through Sunday.
For all the shirts. So.
Yes.
Lancelot.
I ship Gwen a lot.
Not my boys.
I'm Gwarther.
15 million opening weekend, 23 and a half over the 5 days. It would leg out to a whopping $52 million, earning 151 overseas for a $204 million total. So it was actually the biggest grossing movie of this weekend worldwide.
Bruckheimer influence, big European cast. Like
but again, it cost 120, so still no dice.
Yeah, but I mean, I get where the international appeal is. It's a King Arthur story, which has its own level of appeal, and it has a cast of people that are made up mostly of Brits and Europeans. So.
I'm going to skip the number 10 because that's Sleepover, which earned a whopping $4.2 million in 2,200 screens. It would leg out to an also whopping $9.4 million domestic. It earned a spectacular $706,000 overseas for a $10 million global gross. I don't know the budget offhand because I forgot to look it up, but I'm guessing it was not a financial success. Because even if it cost $5 million, that's still not enough.
Yeah.
But it came from MGM, and they're swimming with money.
Fair Night 9/11. What was that?
It came from MGM.
Sorry, what was that?
It came from
yes.
It came from MGM, and they're always swimming with money.
Yes.
Save me, James, as they're always saying. Fair Night 9/11 in fourth place, dropping 33%. A really strong hold considering it's a post-holiday weekend. $11 million. It would earn $80 million by the end of day 17 because it opened on a Friday. Opened on a Friday. And then The Notebook would earn $6.5 million, dropping 12%. So this is where it's starting to show some real leg. No vulgar pun intended. If you're offended, assume I'm talking about Ryan Gosling. It would earn $43 million by the end of its third weekend, on the way to, I believe, an $81 million total. Yes, 81 million domestic, 37 world overseas, 118 worldwide on a $29 million budget. Once again, if you make regular movies and get people to show up to regular movies, you make many monies. Anyway.
Question on the documentary front: is there, beyond after Fair Night 9/11, is there any other political skewing offhand you might not know, but political skewing documentary that's fairly successful in relatively speaking?
You mean this summer or in general?
No, just in general, and more specifically,
well, I mean,
with
Inconvenient
a liberal
Truth
lead.
earns 26 million domestic.
Okay,
but yeah, more often than not, these are films that are far more talked about than actually seen.
And I was also curious if it was with a liberal.
Blackfish did not make 100 million worldwide, for example.
What
Even
about
though that is a
Catfish?
film that everyone has heard of, and that's another perfect example. These are films that had real world impact. Impacted pop culture, and in the case of Catfish, we all now know what catfishing is because of that movie.
Made a TV show out of it too.
Yes.
It's an adjective now.
Yeah.
It's not an adjective, but it's a legit thing now.
It's a verb.
Gone beyond, gone beyond being a movie.
It's always interesting when films that are just unmitigated bombs and really, I would argue, well, to a certain extent, don't gain that much life in post theatrical, still end up, impacting the pop culture. And the example I mentioned on my podcast a bit ago was The Human Centipede, a film that I'm sure was seen by like 12 people outside of the horror nerd bubble. And yet, if you say the phrase human centipede, everyone knows what you're talking about. Pay it forward. That killed the career of every single major participant for like a decade or more in some cases.
Yeah, Jay Moore.
What was that? Oh
yeah,
Jay
Moore.
Jay Moore. But yet, if you say the term pay it forward, everyone knows exactly what you're talking about.
I'd argue that existed outside of that movie also.
Did it? I mean, I'll take your word for it.
I know the term pay it forward.
Yeah.
I mean, catfishing, people probably use that term and don't even know there's a movie or TV show attached to it at this point.
I think they know there's a TV show at the least, or like has some kind of like. Yeah,
do they know those guys made the best Paranormal Activity movie?
Which one is that?
3. I saw Catfish in theaters, by the way, too. It's fine. I like being the one person
my internet girlfriend right after too.
I like being a person that actually knows why catfish is specifically the word that they use. So, there's no real reason. There's no real way to really understand that unless you actually see that movie.
No, I'm curious, but that's for another time.
Yeah.
Speaking of movies that impacted pop culture, White Chicks made $6.2 million, dropping 28%.
I forgot we talked about White Chicks.
Yep.
Sadly true. I'm only half joking. It would eventually earn 113 million worldwide on a 37 budget, leading to Little Man, a film that I have never seen.
Like I'm happier we talked about Soul Plane than we are the fucking White Chicks.
Soul Plane's a better movie by default.
It is.
Yeah.
The Terminal. I'm sorry, I missed Dodgeball, ironically. Dodgeball, 5.7 million, dropping 29%, 98 million after 4 weekends. It would leg out to 114 million domestic, 54 overseas, 168 worldwide on a 20 budget. So, all due respect, it kicked Anchorman's ass in every possible way in theaters, including the quality barometer.
Yeah, not so much. It's an underdog, though, so good on them for trying.
Terminal, $5 million, minus 37%, 65 after 24 days in theaters. It would leg out to 218 million worldwide, 140 overseas, but on a $60 million budget. Not a flop, but not considered much of a hit.
No King Arthur. Yeah,
exactly. No King Arthur.
What's the budget on King Arthur, by the way? What'd you say it was?
120.
And that's what they report. I'm sure it's more. Yeah. I know they had to retool that movie a lot. So.
Yeah. And, maybe the Terminal also needed a 20 minutes longer R-rated director's cut. Who's to say?
Yeah, it's the shooting spree that Diego
more beheadings. Because why should Anchorman and King Arthur be the only movies where people get murdered by tridents?
Yeah, accurate.
True.
Let's see. Shrek 2 still sticking around. 9th place, $4.45 million in its 8th weekend of release, dropping 24%. You cannot kill Shrek 2.
No.
$19 million on the way to a $441 million domestic total. I believe 929 worldwide. This will not be the case by the time you listen to this, but at the time of this recording, it was basically one of the biggest grossing movies never to get any kind of theatrical reissue. But it is coming back to theaters. It has come back to theaters for its 20th anniversary. So
I'll be curious how well that does. Yeah.
I'm very curious how well it does. That and Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace too, yeah.
Is by default the kickoff movie of summer 2024.
It's already kicked off at this point for us.
Yes. Where are we? In July? Yeah.
We're in July. We're mid-July.
We're talking about whether or not people will actually show up to Twisters.
There you go.
Otherwise, we don't need to go through the top 30.
No, we're good.
Metallica's in 46th place.
Not bad for 3 theaters.
On 3 screens. Yeah. It does $46,000 on 3 screens for a $15,000 per screen average. It would leg out to $1.222 million domestic, $2 million worldwide, which again, for a 2.5-hour music documentary, isn't too bad. And for IFC Films, it's one of their biggest hits ever.
Wow.
I don't know if that's true. I'm just being a schmuck.
At the time, maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Brandon, do you
after
like
my big fat, there's my big fat Greek wedding, which is 250 million domestic, and then everything else.
Gotcha.
Brandon, do you like the song Saint Anger?
I can't even recall much of it, but
I think the song's fine. I haven't heard the
it's
album.
fine. It's not like all bad tracks, but it's clearly just a lesser effort from Metallica. And the next album they did would go back to, it's that classic, like, well, let's try to recapture the old sound. So it's not a very challenging or evolving album. So it's almost like it's good if you're like, oh, wow, it sounds like the old stuff. That's fine. And it's not bad. It's good. It's better than Saint Anger, but it's like, okay, we're clearly stepping back here to do from where they came. But because I think, is that next one Death Magnetic? Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's the one where you cater back to those, to you Last Jedi'd it by idea. Oh, look, we're gonna go back and we were wrong. Just keep moving forward. But a lot of
Rise
bands,
of Skywalker did.
Rise of Skywalker did. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, keep moving. You move back, and it's like you're trying to recapture something, but I don't know.
Just to be clear, Saint Anger is the Last Jedi in this situation.
Yeah, no way. Okay, never mind. Moving on. That'll do it for this week. So if you're enjoying this adventure, consider being a patron if you want. Once in a while we'll plug that. Hope you enjoy it. Share it with your friends. Tell them about this show and how to send your Anchorman loving friends hate mail to Scott Mendelson. You could do that.
Right.
So Scott, where can people keep up with you?
I am at Puck News on a semi-weekly basis as part of their Sunday night newsletter, and I keep and maintain a Substack called The Outside Scoop.
Awesome. And Aaron.
I host a podcast called Out Now with Aaron and Abe. My friend Abe and I discuss weekly movie releases, which are a lot of fun. Right now, we're in the throes of the summer gamble, of course, which you guys are also participants of. So we are indeed going over how much money Twisters is potentially going to make. Mm-hmm. And I have my own Substack. The code is zeke.substack.com. Everything I do ends up over there, which includes my movie reviews from Waste Live Entertainment and my Blu-ray reviews from Why So Blue. And I'm on all the socials at Aaron's PS4.
Gotcha. I'm on the socials at Brandon4KUHD. You can find all info about PopCon Louisville coming August 24th through 26th, including the live podcast stage. Sign up for that if it's not full by now, and I'll get you a spot on there, and you can perform your podcast live. Guest-wise, I know who the main guest is possibly going to be, but I can't reveal because he's not announced at the time of this recording, but I will say it is a major Star Trek guest, so that is pretty cool, as well as possibly some others. So keep up with popcon.us for all that, and you could probably keep up with my socials to find out wherever I am going around to promote it on other shows and things like that. So next week, Mother Damn Spoon, Cinderella finds a door in the floor to Maria's place full of grace. All this and more as the summer of 2020 continues.
The summer of 2000.